Lack of messaging strategy and lack of messaging training can create big problems for your startup, and I've seen them all. So I want to talk today about 5 problems that a lot of clients that I've worked with have experienced over the years, and so let's get into it. The first problem I think a lot of you will recognize, it's the 30+ page sales deck. Most sales decks do not start out being 30, 40, or 50 pages. They start out being more like 8 to 10 slides, but what happens over time? You add more people, you have more sales conversations, and slowly over time you've added more and more slides to your deck until before you know it, it's become an overwhelming amount of slides. Every sales conversation you have to pick and choose which slides are going to go in the conversation. You don't have that consistent narrative built out in your sales deck anymore because it's just turned into a Frankenstein deck, really. There's too much in there, and it's bad for new employees too. It's bad for new people that you add to your sales team because they have to go in and decipher which of these 50 slides are most important for them, and you really lack that consistency that you need in order to communicate clearly and consistently with your prospects. So that's number 1. The second is roadmap distractions, and I've seen this with a lot of startups. What happens is that prospects are sold on specific promises that the company cannot yet deliver on, and so sales is often working with product to make sure that those promises can be delivered on for the customers that they ultimately sold. And this creates a big problem for product teams because guess what? They have their own priorities. They know what needs to happen to enrich the product and take it to that next level, but they're stuck constantly delivering features and additions and add-ons that the sales team has promised the prospects. And the reason why is because there's no clear perspective around what the product should do and the value that it provides. And so sellers are doing what they have to do to close the deals. They are making promises, they're making concessions to make sure that their prospects are excited about what they're signing up for. Third is what I call the mini CEO. And what happens is you get people who are very confident in the way that they communicate. They're almost like the CEO who has probably the best understanding of what the problem is. They have the best or most practiced pitch. And slowly over time, as their team has grown, they've added new people who have kind of taken the spot on those sales calls that the CEO no longer participates in. And this is good. You want people that are entrepreneurial in your organization. You want people that continue to push forward, but when you have mini CEOs on your team that believe that the way that they communicate is the best way for everyone to communicate, it creates problems, especially when you don't have the alignment from the very top of the organization all the way down. So mini CEOs can be great in a lot of ways, but in terms of messaging and positioning, all it does is create more noise for you. It's hard for employees to understand which pitch, which way to communicate is best when they're hearing it from their bosses, their managers, people that have a lot of influence across the organization. Fourth is what I call weak hearsay narratives. And this is when employees are taking the narrative that's been communicated by the founder CEO of a startup and they're trying to use it in their conversations. They're trying to take the best parts of that story because they can't tell it perfectly like the founder CEO can. They're trying to take the best pieces of that narrative and they're trying to replicate it in conversations. And what happens is you ultimately get a weak narrative, you get a weak story that doesn't really communicate strongly what the positioning, the differentiation is. And the reason why that happens is because you don't have that foundational narrative in place. You haven't pulled the pieces out of that narrative that the CEO has practiced and perfected over many years sometimes, and you haven't polished that up and you haven't equipped the rest of the team to communicate or use the pieces of that effectively. And then the fifth one is, I think, the most challenging for startups and the one that you should watch out for the most, and that is, when you don't have the messaging and positioning in place, you deal with a lot of endless meetings talking about messaging and positioning. You deal with multiple layers of approval anytime you need to get anything that's market facing out. And what do you get from both of those things? Very slow progress. You slow down. Everyone needs to be involved in the conversation because you don't have that foundation in place. And it just slows down progress. It slows down your ability to deliver on the goals that you set quarter by quarter. And it really impacts culture because if you spend all your time talking and not enough time actually doing the work, nobody feels happy with the progress that's being made. No one feels excited about the journey or the mission or the vision that you're on. All right, so those are the 5 things to watch out for. If you have any questions about any of these or your own perspectives to share, let me know in the comments. Otherwise, we'll talk another day.